Sean could do 3 things real well. He could play basketball, he could do math, and he could season chicken. Once he tried to show me how to do the chicken, but mine came out tasting salty and bitter. "You gonna help or what?" Sean said. He was chopping up carrots and onions. "I said I would, right?" "Well, don't touch any spices," he said, pointing to the spice shelf, giving me a look. "Especially the salt. You can put these in those bowls. I'm going to cook them with the broccoli." I put the carrots and onions in the bowls he'd put on the table. "Broccoli's only good with cheese." He opened the refrigerator and stood there smelling different packages, trying to figure out what to cook and what had gone bad. "You'd put cheese on everything if you could." He threw a package into the garbage can and took out some chopped meat. "Burgers and vegetables." "And rice," I said. I can make rice. It's easy." Sean looked at me. "When you make it, it's like oatmeal. Rice should be all separate. Yours is all sticky." "No, it's not. You're just mad because I make it better than you." "You're dreaming," Sean said. But he reached up in the cabinet and handed me the box of rice. "Don't put a whole lot of salt in it, and make sure you put a little butter in the water." I didn't say anything. He knew I was the better rice maker. Sean started shaping the meat into patties. He took a pan out of the oven and put a little oil in it. "You think Mama's going to be okay, Sean?" I asked after a few minutes had passed. He nodded and watched me put the rice and water in a pot. 2 cups of water, he said. 1.5. That's how Mama does it." I put a little more than Mama, but less than what Sean was saying. Then I put some salt and a little bit of butter in the pot and waited for it to boil. Sean reached over me and stirred it. "If you don't stir it before it starts boiling, it sticks." "Yours sticks. My rice is always perfect." I heard the front door close. "Daddy's home," I signed, leaving Sean standing there stirring my rice. Daddy stood in the long hall leading into our apartment, grinning and holding flowers. Everyone said I was going to be tall like him one day, but it wasn't the tallness I wanted. I wanted his laugh, all loud and silly, and his smile that came into the room a full minute before he did, and I wanted his pretty eyes, the ones Sean got, and his dark, pretty skin that Mama swore I had, but my skin always looked to me like it didn't know what shade it wanted to be. Dark in some places, lighter in other spots. Daddy stepped out of his shoes and took his wet coat off at the same time. I ran down the hall and jumped into his arms, my legs dangling almost to the floor, Sean right behind me. Daddy laughed, walking into the apartment with both of us hanging on to him. "I guess I need to go away more often," he said, signing at the same time. Sean grinned and shook his head. Daddy drove a truck for Interstate Moving and had been away since Wednesday, moving some family's stuff to Indiana. Now it was Friday. His goneness felt like forever sometimes. "You need a job that doesn't make you go away," Sean signed. "Where's my woman?" Daddy said, loud. He shook us off of him and did his caveman walk into the living room. "I'm hungry and I'm tired. And why can't this man smell something good cooking?" "Mama's resting," I said. Sean looked at me. He signed. "I'm cooking. Mama's not feeling well." And Daddy's smile dropped off his face. He dumped the flowers onto the coffee table and headed to Mama's room. I picked up the flowers. They were pretty, yellow and red and white with green leaves bunched around them. "Hey, big brother, what kind are these?" I held the flowers toward him. "Lily," he finger-spelled the word for me, "and roses. The red and white ones are roses. You know that," he signed. "Must be payday. Flowers cost a lot in the winter time." "When I have a daughter," I signed, "her name will be Lily Rose." Sean made a face and headed back into the kitchen. I followed him. "Your rice is boiling." I turned the fire down underneath the pot and covered it. Sean got the jar that Mama used for flowers down from the shelf. I filled it with water and put the flowers in slowly. Sean pulled down plates and took forks out of the drawer. He put 4 glasses on the kitchen table. We didn't have a dining room, but our kitchen was big enough for 4 people to move around in. Then, without saying anything, he put the burgers on, washed his hands, put some oil in another pan, and started cooking the carrots. "What about the onions and broccoli?" I said. "And cheese?" Sean took a deep breath. "Carrots take the longest, so you have to cook them first, then onions, then broccoli, then a tiny bit of salt. Not a whole lot like you think everything needs. He stirred the carrots, then covered them. The only sound was the sound of things frying. Sean watched me take a red rose and move it closer to a white one. Then I thought for a moment and put a lily and some of the green leaves between the two. He turned back to the stove, flipped the burgers, then tore a paper bag in half and put a big piece of it on a plate. Then he added the onions to the carrots, stirred and covered the pan again. He went back over to the refrigerator and opened it, then just stood there, staring inside. He had ears like Mama, small and perfect shaped. When he was born, the doctors had wanted to do some new kind of operation to fix the inside of them, but Mama and Daddy said no. "Nobody's experimenting on my child," Mama said. "If that's the way he came into the world, that's the way he's staying. It's us we need to change." And she and Daddy started learning sign language. By the time I was born, Sean was 2.5 years old. I grew up learning how to speak and sign. Sometimes when he walked past her, Mama just grabbed him and kissed his ears. Sean always laughed, but he pushed her away at the same time. I wondered if he was standing staring into the refrigerator thinking about that. Years later, when I asked Mama why they didn't just get the operation, she said because it was dangerous and not guaranteed. And most of all, she said, signing at the same time. There's nothing wrong about being deaf. It's just another language. So now that you're bilingual, Mama said. That's a gift. That was the first and last time anybody said anything about me being gifted. I waved my hand at Sean to get his attention. He liked that more than somebody coming up and touching him. "The ocean," I signed. Sean shrugged. "Water," he signed. "Water and air. It sounds the way air feels on your face on a windy day." He took some ketchup out of the refrigerator and one slice of cheese. "Here," he signed, putting the cheese down on one of the plates. "That's where you sit." "Yellow," he signed. "That's a hard one, Sean. Yellow doesn't have a sound." "Nothing has a sound to me. That's how this game got started. Yellow." We'd been playing this game since we were real little. One person gave the word and the other person had to describe it, to make the person feel it someplace inside of themselves, to make the person hear it. Sean was better at the game than me, but I still loved playing. "Like something soft," I signed. "A pillow, or yellow sounds like bubbles feel, lots of them in a bathtub." Sean nodded. Then he turned the fire off beneath the burgers and put each of them on the plate with the paper bag. I watched the bag get dark from the oil. He stirred the onions again, adding some spices, a little bit of butter, and the broccoli, then stirred it once more, added some water, turned the heat down beneath it, and covered the pan. "Music," I said. "What kind?" He looked at my rice, then raised his eyebrows. I turned it off, but didn't lift the top. "Perfect," I said. "A guitar." Sean thought for a minute. "Like rain," he said, "coming down real soft when it's warm out, and you only get a little wet, but not cold. That kind of rain." I smiled. That's exactly what it made me feel like when I had heard a guitar playing softly. Daddy came out of the bedroom. We watched his face. His eyebrows twitched. You had to look hard to see it. "Let her rest a bit," he said finally. "Dinner ready? Smells good in here." For a while we ate without doing much talking. I watched the cheese melt on my burger, then poured ketchup over everything, stirred my rice until it turned pink. We listened for Mama to come out of her room, but she didn't. "Anything interesting happen at school this week?" Daddy asked. He took a bite of his vegetables and smiled at Sean. Me and Sean both shook our heads. "Nothing interesting happened with work either," Daddy said softly. "The road from here to Indiana is flat as my feet. Every now and then, a bright green road sign pops up to keep you awake." "Is Indiana pretty?" I asked. Daddy thought for a minute. "Pretty light when the sun's coming up, but what place ain't pretty at the beginning and end of the day?" "Where's the prettiest place you've ever been, Daddy?" Daddy grinned. "I guess California. Took me a long time to drive there, but when I got there, I went straight to the ocean. It was almost night when I pulled the truck up to where I could see the water." He closed his eyes a moment. "All those different colors spilling over everything." Then he opened his eyes and looked at me and Sean. "And here," he said. Sean watched his lips. When Daddy finished speaking, Sean kept on watching them. After a while, Daddy got up from the table, scraped the food off his plate, and put the plate in the sink. I watched Sean watch Daddy. Sometimes he just stared, and it was like his eyes were trying to do everything, speak and hear and smell and touch. Maybe that's why they were so beautiful. They had all the senses right there in them, showing through. "There's another one coming," Daddy signed. "Another baby." He smiled, a kind of laugh smile, like he was just as surprised as we were by what he was hearing. "What? Another baby?" Dad signed again. "That's crazy. Mama's too old. We're all too old. What's anybody in this house going to do with a baby?" Sean smiled, like it was all slowly sinking in, and he liked what was becoming clear or something. "A baby," he signed. "Wow." He leaned back in his chair and stared out the kitchen window. Snow was still coming down hard. "A baby," he signed again. I ran my fork through my rice, feeling all kinds of silly things. I was the baby who had made it. It was sad, but each time one of those other babies didn't make it, it seemed clear to me that I was the one who was supposed to be the baby in the family. "I don't know why she has to be so tired about it all," I said. "Doesn't make any sense." I didn't say what I really wanted to say. "What if you and Mama come home crying again?" I wanted to say. "What if we think a baby's coming but it doesn't come all the way?" Daddy looked at me. "Because you're right, Franny. She is old, and that makes it hard to be pregnant, and—" But he shook his head and didn't finish what he was going to say. After a minute passed, he signed, "So let her get some rest and try to grow you all a brother or sister." I shrugged. "Even if it's a girl, I'm not sharing my room, that's for sure." Daddy ignored me. "Sean, you wash tonight," he signed. "Franny, you dry and wipe everything down." "I don't want to wash," Sean glared at Daddy. "I always have to wash." "Because you always get them clean," Daddy signed. "Franny, you wash the dishes then." I shrugged. I didn't mind washing. The warm water felt good in the wintertime, and the bubbles were fun to squeeze through my hands. "Forget it," Sean signed. "She doesn't know how to do it. We'll be eating hamburgers and rice off our plates for a week. I'll wash." Daddy put his hands up. "Ain't that where we started?" he said. "Come say goodnight to your mama before you go to bed, you hear?" Me and Sean nodded. Then Sean got up and started in on the dishes. Somewhere in another apartment, somebody was playing music, the same song over and over again. It never felt right to be hearing the song and not have Sean hearing it too. I knew he had his own music going inside his head, music I'd never be able to hear, and maybe that made him sad. But still, sometimes when I heard music, even if Sean was right next to me, I missed him. I got up and took my plate over to the sink. Me and Sean didn't even look at each other, but I bumped him with my shoulder on purpose, and he bumped me right back. For some strange reason, it was enough for both of us just to be standing side by side.